I took a year off between undergrad and veterinary school to travel the world. I had the time of my life and I believed it helped me get accepted to vet school. In this video, I will be explaining my experience. I'll be explaining why I did this, how I did this, where I went, and why you should consider this yourself. Before going on this trip, I had some concerns. I was worried about missing some opportunities. Some of my friends were going directly into veterinary school or medical school. Some of them were getting jobs and starting their careers. Some of them were buying houses, getting engaged. And I was just about to take off and travel. I worried that I might come back and just not feel like I fit in with the rest of my friends or be farther behind in life. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how much this would all cost, if it was even possible. I was concerned about how I would be able to survive in these strange new countries completely by myself. I left for my trip not knowing if I was accepted to vet school. I actually had my interview halfway through the trip when I was in Panama City, Panama, overlooking the city on a Zoom call before Zoom was cool. The people that I was interviewing with also loved to travel, so I was able to connect with them. I shared my eagerness and my openness to exploring new cultures and meeting new people and connecting with people around the world. I'd also been traveling and staying in hostels for months before this. In the hostels, I would have mini interviews, basically, meeting new people, sharing our life stories. So my interview came across as very genuine and natural, and I believe that expressing some of the skills that I'd learned along the way, some of my interpersonal skills, problem solving, a lot of this helped me to get accepted to vet school. Starting off with, why did I want to do this trip? I had always wanted to travel. Growing up as a kid, not so much. We'd gone on some vacations down to Florida. We never really traveled much farther than that. I always thought travel was this thing you did maybe once a year. It was kind of stressful, expensive. But as I started to get older, I was exposed to people and see things on the internet of these wonderful destinations and vacations, things you'd hear about in the movies. I chose my undergrad program because of some of the international travel opportunities that they offered. However, when I started along my undergrad degree, I found out that these opportunities were quite expensive, several $1,000s per week. And I just couldn't rationalize putting myself more in debt for just a couple weeks. I started to look things up, and one thing that kind of changed my mind was the book, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. He gave these ideas of being able to travel in countries where the cost of living was much lower than the US, being much cheaper than spending time and staying in the US. There was this idea that really stuck in my head of kind of being an old man, saving up my whole life, finally getting to go to Machu Picchu and not being able to climb up the stairs to see it. This really stuck with me. I've also heard a lot of people say that if they could do things again, the one thing that they would change is to just take off and travel for a bit. So I was young, I was healthy, I had very minimal commitments. I had some fears about getting started and where I would go, what I would do, but ultimately I believed that this was going to be the right decision for me, and it ended up being one of the best things I've ever done in my life. For more of the practical stuff on how I was able to do this trip, my last semester of undergrad, I was able to take a smaller amount of credits. I worked full-time as a veterinary technician. I was able to graduate a semester early due to taking classes over the summers previously. This allowed me to work full-time for about 12 months. I was able to save up about $13,000 from some of the research that I did on some of the blogs and books that I've read. I was going to be able to spend around $30 a day. In the end, I traveled for about 11 months and I spent under $10,000. This equated to about $30 a day. To give some comparison, living and working back in Tampa, I was spending about $50 a day just on groceries, rent, utilities, going out with a beer every once in a while, living pretty frugally, not spending my money on a lot of things. Some of my favorite resources that I use to help plan my trip: Nomadic Matt, he has a book, Travel the World on $50 a day. He also has a great website. The Broke Backpacker, I have a lot of nice maps and itineraries for traveling. They also give suggestions for people that want to travel but don't necessarily want to spend a ton of money. I would use the Lonely Planet guidebooks every once in a while just to get some more details about a place. It also gives some nice history and information to really appreciate a place a bit more. But mostly I used people that I found in hostels on the road along the way. After a bit of time traveling, I got tired of always looking things up and planning things. So I would show up to a new place in a hostel, go down to the community area, start talking with the staff, start talking with other travelers, see what they had done and see what they were going to do the next day, and potentially just jump on and join them. Before I left, I had a backpack, I had a budget, and I had about 2 weeks planned. I knew I was going to fly into Mexico. I had some idea of what I was going to do for those 2 weeks. I also had a very rough idea of kind of my route down through Central and South America. The last and most important thing was just having the courage and the boldness to take this trip, to buy a one-way ticket to Mexico and just embrace new things, new cultures, new experiences, not necessarily have an exact idea of what was going to happen, but just have the confidence in myself to know that I was going to get through. I would be able to meet people, I would be able to get over obstacles and find my way through and live in these strange new countries. So what did my whole trip consist of? Well, I flew into Mexico, into Cancun. I went down, ate some tacos on the beach, spent some time in the Yucatan, went to Guatemala, enjoyed lounging under volcanoes in these huge lakes. I kept going down to Costa Rica. I trekked into the rainforest. I spent some time working at some shelters and a hospital taking care of sea turtles and howler monkeys. From there, I went to Panama. I skipped through the San Blas Islands, sailing, exploring new tiny little islands. Then into Colombia, I spent time exploring the cities and hiking through their national parks. Into Brazil, I floated down the Amazon River for 3 days. We almost encountered some pirates, but just missed them. I went to Rio. I was in the carnival. After that, I took a flight over to Europe. I spent some time in London sipping beer in pubs. I worked at a hostel over there and found a family away from my home. I slept on the beaches in Portugal, and I did so much more. I had the time of my life. I met some of the greatest people that I've ever met. I was able to connect with people of all sorts of backgrounds, see their culture, understand them, and connect with them on a more meaningful way. I ended up gaining a lot of confidence in myself, my ability just to survive in these new situations and new environments, getting around, finding things to do, just going to the grocery store and feeding myself sometimes was a huge adventure and an achievement. I gained confidence in building new relationships in my life. I would show up with a room full of a bunch of strangers, and sometimes by the end of the night, I was closer to them than some of the people that I'd known for years back home. This trip also helped to prepare me for vet school. It helped me to develop new skills, to have an open mind, to be able to communicate with people more efficiently and connect with them on a deeper level. There were definitely parts of this trip that weren't just sunshine and rainbows. It was a lot of loneliness. I would show up to these new places not knowing anybody. Sometimes I couldn't really connect with people at first and just spent time exploring things by myself. Sometimes I would make some great friends and have wonderful experiences. But at the end, we are both travelers and we went our separate ways. So overall, the pros and the benefits that I gained from this trip far outweigh those few inconveniences that I had. If you want to develop yourself as a person and open the door for so many new possibilities and ideas in your life, then I highly recommend taking the time to travel. It's also one of the most fun and enjoying things that I've ever done in my life. It's made me into the person that I am today. In the end, I think this experience played a big role in my development as a person. It also was very crucial to get accepted to vet school, having a great interview. I was able to learn more about myself and the world, specifically the people that inhabit it, how much that we have in common with people from very different backgrounds, and how to connect with those people. Gain confidence in myself, knowing that I was able to make it through these seemingly challenging situations and to be able to find friends wherever I went. If you're thinking about doing something like this, I highly recommend you do it. Whether you're between jobs, whether you're trying to get into vet school, whether you got rejected to vet school and you're just looking for something to change up your application a little bit. This trip was one of the best parts of my life. Again, it made me to the person that I am today. I still continue to travel whenever I can. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I hope you've learned something and given you some inspiration to travel yourself. And if you like what you saw, please feel free to like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.